Welcome back, folks. It's the True Money Podcast, episode 7 here. So, sorry for the delay in this one. The idea with these podcasts is that I would try to get one out every 7 to 10 days, but it's been more than 2 weeks since the last one. I've been very busy with writing on this topic of Bitcoin through the lens of economic and monetary theory analysis. So I've been writing some articles, actually working on a book on the topic as well. So maybe I won't be focusing on this podcast as much as every 7 to 10 days. It might be once a month, maybe twice a month. But what I wanted to get out in the meantime, taking a step away from economic theory. So this is an interview that we'll have a look at that Jordan Peterson, Michael Saylor had this discussion, I believe on the 30th of May, and it was put up on the Jordan Peterson podcast website on YouTube on the 9th of June. So if you want to find the whole video, if you haven't seen it already, and you want to listen to Michael Saylor talk for over an hour, which I'm not sure that that many people would want to do unless they're already in the Bitcoin fan club. But it's there. You can get it on Jordan Peterson's YouTube or Spotify, I guess, wherever else he puts the podcast out. But Michael Saylor said some interesting things in this episode that I'm going to cover very, very briefly. I won't be diving into the whole episode, but I will look at some of the statements that he says that are utter nonsense, really, in terms of economic analysis, and then some egregious comments, really, in relation to what God would do to perfect money, which we'll get to. But let's go ahead and we'll have a look at we'll listen to what he says.
I looked over 100 years and I realized that at a 2% inflation rate, and that's the rate at which we mine more gold, at a 2% inflation rate, that means the half-life of gold is about 36 years, which means that the value of the gold you hold is cut in half 3 times over 100 years.
Okay, I mean, this on the face of it seems sensible, but it's actually nonsense, and anyone that understands economics will know this. So Michael Saylor is falsely equating scarcity with value. He is taking, he uses the term half-life. He's taken, a very engineering type approach to scarcity. And he is assuming, and it's a false assumption, it's incorrect, that if the supply of money increases at all, then the value of the money must fall. And as we covered in previous episodes, we looked at the curve, the Mackin curve that I've produced to show how the expectation of money issuance impacts purchasing power expectations. We can see that the gold retains its purchasing power over long horizons, and the empirical evidence shows that. So not at all this very simplistic idea of value equals scarcity, or scarcity equals value, that Saylor has come out with here, which is complete nonsense. The purchasing power of a money is a product of market forces, and yes, the supply of money is a part of that, but crucially with gold, the supply was dictated by free market forces, and as we've seen in the last video, the sine curve type peaks and troughs of how gold supply responds to market signals is evidence that its value remains constant, not, as Saylor claims here, its value is cut in half 3 times over 100 years.
Which means that if you started with the 100, you ended up with 12.5% of the money you started with over 100
Explain
years.
that in a little more detail. How does that happen with gold?
Say you owned 100% of the supply of gold this year. The gold miners produce 2% more gold every year. It compounds, which means it takes 36 years before they've doubled the supply of gold.
Got it.
So that doesn't mean that the value falls by 50%. Again, Not really much I can add to my previous point. It's a false equivalence here that scarcity equals value. Of course, the value of money is measured in its purchasing power, and the empirical evidence shows that Saylor doesn't know what he's talking about. He's setting up a false equivalency argument here for scarcity so that he can then argue that a fixed limit money must be superior, which is incorrect.
You own half the supply of gold in 30 years. You own a quarter of the supply of gold in 70 years.
So the relative scarcity decreases as you hold it.
It's inflating.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
And so gold, although it's quote unquote sound money, and in the Austrian economy school of thought, it was the best money, it's not perfect money. The reason that you had stable prices throughout the gold era, the gold standard age, is gold was inflating about 2% a year, and the economy is growing 2% a year.
Well, this is not true either. This is inaccurate because the economy didn't grow at 2% a year in the long run over the period that gold was used as money. There were peaks and troughs in this, and what's important to understand is that because the gold supply is not a fixed limit, because it can respond to market signals, and this goes back to my example of the sine curve, and you can look at the episode 6, and we looked at how there's peaks and troughs in the supply of gold. That balances out the purchasing power over the long run. So this is, again, yet another simplistic and incorrect argument from Saylor, all building towards his key point where he tries to ascertain or assert that a fixed limit money is superior when it's not.
And so if the output of goods and services grow at the rate of the money supply, the price is constant. Okay? If the money supply is fixed and the economy grew 2% a year, prices will fall 2% every year.
Right.
And by the way, in technology, when you look at technical products where
I'll just stop here because he is starting to make this point about the money supply being fixed. And the economy grows 2% per year, then prices will fall. Well, that is the start of the deflationary spiral, and in fact the economy won't grow if the money supply is fixed because of the expectations of increased purchasing power driving a hoarding behaviour. So the economy will never grow with a fixed limit money. It will always start to enter a deflationary spiral and contract. So again, another simplistic argument from Saylor that shows a complete lack of understanding of any economics. I think that I'm not sure he's read any economics books at all. He's dived straight into Bitcoin propaganda in relation to why a fixed limit money is superior, and he's regurgitating those points.
The company grows productivity faster than 2%. In a gold world, the price would fall very fast. Okay, so what's going on is
well, in a fixed limit money world, the price would fall even faster, so much so that there would be very quickly a lack of any production incentives. If you have a money that is increasing in value at 30 to 50% per year, well, to stop holding that money and invest it in production, you're going to need a business model that can produce 30 to 50% per year profit plus a risk premium for taking the risk of undergoing that production, which of course when the prices of your output, whatever you can produce as a result of that investment, when the prices are constantly falling in a deflationary spiral, there's very few productive activities that will produce that return.
There's a race between productivity and money supply. And if I can drive the price of the product down 20% a year, I can inflate the amount of money 10% a year, and the price of that thing will fall 10%.
Yep.
But if I didn't inflate the price of money, it would fall 20%, you see. So
And there he defeats his own argument because, in an environment where prices are falling and you've got a fixed limit money, as he's just admitted, that there's no mechanism where you can stop the prices from falling. That is the deflationary spiral, but he doesn't see it. He doesn't recognise it, as most Bitcoiners don't.
I looked at gold. I said, I need something like gold. But the problem with gold is it's a conventional asset. It had kind of recovered a bit. And I thought, it's not perfect. It's the best idea in the 19th century. And it's not quite working in the 20th century.
And here he is conflating time periods with each other. When the problem with Bitcoin is the fixed limit, gold didn't have that problem, and that's why it worked as money for the extended periods of time over known history, thousands of years of gold money. But he's conflating somehow that it doesn't work in the digital age.
And so I started thinking, what if someone designed digital gold? What if now we go back to the engineer saying, can you perfect gold?
Well, it's not an engineering problem because this is a problem of money. So how would an engineer solve a problem that he doesn't understand? And this is the issue with Satoshi trying to design a money system. He was a computer programmer. He was not an economist. He showed no understanding of economics whatsoever, as does Michael Saylor. But he believes it's an engineering problem, which is quite bizarre. Money is an economics problem, not engineering.
And the engineering idea, how do you fix gold and make it perfect? Well, you make it impossible to mine anymore. What if, and then we get into the fantasy thing. What if, if God came down, and there's a bit of theology here, if you allow me, if God came down and wanted to fix gold, it's impossible to make any more gold.
And this is really the egregious statement that I wanted to cover quickly in this video. So, who does Saylor think put the gold there in the first place? It is laughable, these type of arguments that come from Bitcoiners. So Michael Saylor here is saying that he knows more than God about how to design a good money. And that God would come down and say that that gold should have a fixed limit. Well, if that was the case, then it would cease to have become money thousands and thousands of years ago, and we would have some other better money, because a fixed limit money is impossible in the long run. It's impossible in any run. The short run would cause a deflationary collapse as well. But this is the statement that I wanted to cover. This absolute megalomania that he seeks to perfect a natural solution, and that he believes that he knows more than God about this situation, which is really some claim to make. So we'll just skip forward into the interview. This comment that we look at now, I wanted to cover it as well. I thought it was interesting. It appears at 1 hour 19 minutes into the interview. The previous section that we looked at there was around 1 hour 4 minutes into the interview. But let's listen to Saylor's comments here on this part.
So Bitcoin starts with this ideology of the engineers, the scientists, the mathematicians, right? And we create a protocol. The protocol is...
So he says, we create a protocol. Now, whenever I watched this interview, whenever it came out, that just struck me as strange that he would say, we create a protocol. Now, to me, there's only two reasons for this, and one's fairly conspiratorial. We means that he had some involvement in the creation of the Bitcoin protocol. Now, I don't believe that to be the case. I think that, if there was some kind of a plan around Bitcoin, that Michael Saylor is part of the scheme somehow, that he's wasn't involved from the beginning and has somehow been brought in as a mascot to push the mainstream and financial and institutional adoption of it. So on that basis, I just thought it was interesting that he says we create a protocol. Now, I have to, it may well be the case that he simply refers to we because he's referring to I think he said engineers, mathematicians and scientists created Bitcoin, and he considers himself to be within those fields of expertise. So therefore he says we created the protocol. Now, I just thought it was interesting, wanted to highlight it. I will let you decide if he means anything or what he means by it.